Time now to hear the answers to our question of the week. We put it out there. If you could go back in time to any sporting event in history and watch it live, what would you go back and see? And I got to tell you, the responses were fantastic.
Oh, some great responses, not only through people being fans, but people going back in history before cameras, Casey, before television. That is a great question. We received a ton of responses from a lot of people out there.
Well, one of my favorites was one of the ones I said, which was I'd like to go back to the original Olympiad, the very first one, thousands of years ago, find out what it was all about. Were there really gods and mortals? Were they running with bare feet? I don't know. First marathon, I think it would have been kind of cool. But in a more modern world, people talked about Jesse Owens and being there live to see him sort of stick it to the Nazi regime and Adolf Hitler when he won all of the gold medals. Sports Doctor, what were some of the ones that you got?
Well, Mike writes in and he says he would have loved to have been there when Secretariat won the Triple Crown. I'm right there with you, Mike. That's, horse racing's right up my alley. So Mike would have liked to have seen that moment. John says, hey, how about the 2004 ALCS game where, Dave Roberts stole second base and carried through, and the Red Sox beat the Yankees.
My man Sarge said he wanted to be there for Roger Maris's speech. Some people weighed in and said they'd want to be there for that great Lou Gehrig speech. But Timmy Burrows brought up a good one, and that was in 2001, after 9/11, when President Bush took the mound and threw out the first pitch in the World Series. It was one of the few times where Republican, Democrat didn't matter, we were united, and I was rooting for him to throw a strike. And to hear Derek Jeter's story about how he was warming up beneath Yankee Stadium, he was warming up beforehand because he was desperate to throw a strike. He didn't want to let the country down. You talk about pressure. That's pressure.
Yeah, Mike talks about October 2nd, 1978, with Bucky Leaping Dent with the home run. Peter talks about how about back in the days of the Negro League, with Satchel Paige pitching. No cameras back then, no fanfare, but how exciting and how special would have been in some of those games. Josh Gibson, some of those legends.
I think a lot of people said they wanted to go back to a time when there were no cameras, but I have somebody who weighed in, and I love this one. Cameras were around, it's modern, but they weren't there. He wanted to be at the infamous Dream Team Inter-Squad practice, dubbed the greatest game in history that nobody has seen because the cameras weren't there. Think about it. Magic, Bird, Isaiah, Larry, battling each other in what all of them said was the most competitive basketball game they've ever been a part of, and nobody's seen it.
Closed-door practice right there. Chuck Daly on the sidelines coaching the ever dapper Chuck Daly. Casey, so many people chiming in. And again, people talking about the bloody sock game with Curt Schilling, the UConn National Championships, the Thriller in Manila. Think about, history, sports' place in history. A lot of good things out there.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for all of you that weighed in on our question of the week.